What's up, guys? It's your boy Zaf coming at you with another exquisite topic on Monday at 7 p.m. As always, you know what we're here to do. We're here to level up, and that is the name of the game in my stream, in my Fighter Academy. So, you know I got my handy dandy notebook, no Steve from Blue's Clues. We're gonna get right into it, all right? So, movement. I feel like movement is something a lot of people, a lot of players, they just kind of overlook. They're not aware of it, particularly within themselves or externally. Genesis.
You loyal, you grateful. I appreciate that.
Thank you, good sir. That's 3 months of being subbed to your boy Zaf. Nothing else I can say, but I appreciate you, brother, man. You already know that. So thank you so much, Shade. Much love to you as always. So movement is something that I think separates the elite from the obsolete. All right. So what actually puts up those parameters that make it so easy to distinguish who is better than who. All right. Like especially at the top level, there are a lot of players that are intermediate or they're at the advanced level, but they're not experts because the more subtle the game gets, the more difficult it is for them to pick up on things that are occurring. And I think movement is by far the most important and the most subtle thing that can occur in the game, okay? Because movement is like the skeleton of a player. It's a skeleton of a person's intentions, their ambitions, what they desire. You can tell all of these things based off of how somebody's moving, all right? So you can tell what they want to accomplish based off of how they're moving, where they're moving, and when they're moving. When being in a sense of like at what point in the match, when you factor in meter, you factor in health, stun, right? And the invisible factors that you don't see on the screen, like, you know, successful behavior. How many times have you achieved something versus your opponent? How is that influencing them? Or how many times have they achieved something versus you, and how does that influence their behavior? All right, but movement is basically the precursor to their actions. All right, based on how they're going to move, it's going to tell you what somebody's trying to potentially get away with, right? So our goal today is to figure out how do we indicate an opponent's intentions through movement, okay? So this is going to be primarily a basic discussion, but there are going to be some advanced elements towards the end that I'm going to introduce along with video examples, all right? I'm going to have a Street Fighter 4 example, and I'm going to have a Street Fighter 5 example also. I like to go back and forth between older games and 5, you know, because some of the people that do watch, they just like to watch and support me, and they are also interested in applying these things in older games or other fighting games. So these things are applicable to various types of fighting games too, okay? So movement is just very important, regardless if you're playing Dragon Ball Z, Marvel, Skullgirls, Mortal Kombat, like Street Fighter, Tekken, especially Tekken, right? But Tekken's a 3D game, so different rules, of course. But movement is going to be very important for creating consistency within your style of play, okay? So that's our goal. We're going to try to figure out how do we indicate our opponent's intentions through movement, okay? So let's start off with, well, what types of movement exists, all right? Well, to keep it simple, there's only 2 types of movement that exist in this game, okay? Movement, all right? Meaning you're going in a direction, all right? So from point A to point B. Doesn't matter the distance, but it's just the fact of the matter that you are trying to transition, okay? So there's 2 types of movements, right? There's forward, and there's backwards, okay? So that is the 2 generic styles of movement. Of course, there is neutral jump, right? And that's a movement technically, but you're not moving forward or backwards. So we can count that as like some I like to call it a static movement. So I don't necessarily classify it as a progressive movement where it alters spacing, because when you move in a neutral jump, you're just landing in the same exact spot, right? Unless you can alter it. I think Colleen is probably one of the few characters that can alter her trajectory when she neutral jumps, but by doing ice, I believe. But yeah, so when you neutral jump, you're gonna land in the same exact position for the most part. All right, so this is a very static. It's a very linear direction, and you're gonna land in the same exact spot. Obviously, if you jump forward or you jump backwards, those are other types of movements, but we'll get into that in a second. Okay, so when somebody is moving forward or moving backwards, now this does one of two things. If you're moving forward, you're closing the gap. Okay, if you're moving backwards, you're increasing the gap. What does that mean? Well, if you're closing the gap, that means that the distance between you and your opponent is getting smaller, aka you're getting closer to your opponent. The gap that's between you and your opponent only exists because your opponent is there. If my Cammy wasn't there, there would be no gap. It would just be Akuma on the stage by himself, right? But because there's an opposing character, that gap is created between us. We are the ones that influence the spacing because of how we're moving, okay? So when I move forward, I'm closing the gap. That means I'm getting closer. And the closer you are, the greater your chances of landing a move because your opponent is less likely to be out of range of the attack. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to hit, but all I'm saying is that if your opponent weren't to do something to circumvent your attack in some way, shape, or form, movement would not be the option because you'd be in range. They wouldn't be able to move out of the range of the attack. All right, on the ground, of course. They could jump over the attack. They could maneuver around said attack in that manner, but in terms of being grounded, they wouldn't be able to move away from your attack, right? If you're in range of the attack, because by the time you press it, they try to walk away, you'd hit them, you'd strike them, of course, right? So backwards movement increases the gap. So usually this is associated with a defensive mindset, okay? So whenever you see somebody moving backwards, that can tell you that they're moving in a defensive manner, okay? Moving forward is offensive, aka aggressive, and moving backwards would be defensive. I'd actually also classify neutral jump as primarily defensive, except for in certain instances where, let's say, Akuma neutral jumps and has V-trigger fireball. Then in that instance, you could use this as a offensive maneuver, okay? But for the most part, this is going to be a defensive tactic because what it does is that you are maintaining spacing. Anytime you maintain a space or you're moving away from a space, that is more of a defensive mindset. Anytime you're trying to shorten the gap offensively, that's what you're doing. You're moving forward, okay? So now let's take forward and backwards movement even further, okay? So now there are subcategories that you can go even further into. So the big three, at least for me, in terms of one of these two categories I'm going to break down, are things that everybody does. Everybody tends to do this. The lower skilled players rely on this type of movement a lot more because they don't understand the risk associated with doing it, okay? So with movement, you have forward and backwards, right? Like we said. And then within that dimension of moving forward and backwards, you have two things. You have subtle movement and you have big movement, okay? So I'm going to start off with big movement because that's the more obvious thing to discuss here. So big movement are one of these three things: dashes, jumps, or attacks, unique and special attacks that move you forward, okay? Because all of these things can be used to transition or to close the gap, all right? At the higher level, you'll see, or the highest level, you'll see people learn or demonstrate that they can maneuver and place their character in different spacings in different ways. So let's say I want to get into my Stand Fierce range. You'll see top level players, maybe they'll do Tatsu into it, right? Just because it's enough of a obvious move to create confusion, and that confusion can make somebody hesitate just enough to press a button late and get crush countered. Okay, so you have dash. That's another big move, right? So we have the whip special, right? You have the dash, or you have jump. And the reason why these are big moves, I like to call them big moves, are because you can't block. You cannot immediately go into a block when you do it, all right? So if I dash, I can't block immediately. That's why you see Akuma, he follows through with this animation, right? And I'm holding down immediately. If you watch my inputs, I'm dashing and holding down immediately, but I'm not blocking, right? And the same if I were to jump. If I were to jump, I cannot block until I land on the ground and go through ground recovery frames if I press the button, right? So when you do these big moves, And if your opponent hasn't committed to anything, technically they're at advantage because they have the options to move before you. So they can attack before you. All right? Unless you're jumping, of course. If you're jumping, you can press a button in the air. All right? That's one of the instances where you can do that. You can cancel your jumping into a button. All right? And then you can fall with an attack. And that can lead into pressure. This is why it's important for players to anti-air to keep you out of the air, because if you do jump in, if I were to jump in on you and you block this, that's a lot of offense that gets established right there. That's potentially a game-changing moment that gets created, because now I'm in my offensive range where I can throw you and I can maximize my punishes, right? So we don't want that to happen. That's why anti-airing is very important, okay? So dashing it's the same thing as jump, except for you can't cancel it into an attack right away, all right? So you have to go and resolve the animation. You have to completely finish the animation before you can do anything, including block, button, special attack, whatever, okay? And jumping, again, like we said, you can cancel it in the air into an attack, but you can't block in the air, all right? So if I jump and Cammy's grounded, Cammy still has the better options because she can choose what she wants to do. She has more variety in terms of tool set that she can choose from. She can anti-air me, she can dash underneath me, she can air to air me, she can backdash, she can dash, she can do dash under or cross under, she can do all these other things, whereas I am very static in my choices, where it's like, well, I jumped, I can press a button or I cannot press a button. I can attack or I can't attack, okay? And the same deal goes for the special attacks. The attacks that whiff, you have to resolve and go through your animations, right? So if I whiff this and I'm moving with movement intentions, right? I can't do anything until I recover. So I'm gonna mash jab. You see, it didn't come out until I recovered. So I'm not blocking, okay? So that's why I call them big moves, because the big moves have risk behind them, okay? Risk is associated with big moves. So when you perform a risky attack, the simplest way I could put it for you is it means you're not blocking. So think of risk as unblock, okay? So if you're trying to figure out how can you make a comeback against an opponent, well, first off, you need to hit them, right? Well, how do you hit them? Well, you want to hit them because they're not blocking. That's the only way you're gonna hit them. Otherwise, they're gonna just block your attack, right? So you need to figure out, based off of what's going on the screen, where are they not blocking? What can I take advantage of, right? And maybe they are blocking. If they're blocking a lot, then walk up and get a sense of their rhythm. If I see Cammy's just like sitting there crouching, right, like this, I'd say, okay, let me walk and figure out what her intentions are, because she's not moving. I don't know what she's trying to do. I just know that she's looking for something, because crouch identifies I'm looking for something, right? There's some sort of ulterior motive that I'm just not letting you know of yet, but it's there. It's a matter of figuring it out, okay? What's going on, Hot Stepper? Rodriguez, thank you for coming through. And Brutus, my brother, appreciate you guys as always. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this, okay? So the other type of movement would be the subtle movement. So the big movements I would associate with risk, which are dashing, jumping, and special attacks or unique attacks that move forward. So examples of unique attacks that move forward would be Urian's forward medium punch, right, where he goes like that. He's moving forward. They do whiff that to, close the ground. It can be Guile with Sabot kick. That's another way of moving forward, right? So you have all these characters that do that. They can use that for movement. So you'll have players that use attacks to not necessarily hit you, but just close the gap in unique ways, just enough so that it can throw you off, okay? So let's talk about subtle movement. So subtle movement is moving forward or backwards, right? But you introduce a block. So the block is a cancel, essentially, right? So if I'm holding forward...
Appreciate that.
Oh, Van, thank you, sir, for the sub. I appreciate it, brother, man. Much love to you. Thank you so much. That's Van. He runs the also godlike Platinum City Gaming venue out in Taunton, Massachusetts. If anybody watching is around that area, I highly recommend going through there. It's a massive venue, well ventilated, awesome people, great energy, great vibes, and there's tons of places to eat around there, okay? So much love to you. I appreciate it, man. All right, so when we talk about subtle movement, we talk about the ability to, at any moment, do something, okay? So let's say I'm walking forward, all right? If I'm walking backwards, at any moment I can cancel. I can go into a block. I can move, right? I can walk forward and jump. I can walk forward and go into a special. I can walk and crouch. I can walk and dash, right? I can go, right? I have options through subtle movement. And the thing about subtle movement is because it's not so obvious, because all it is just forward and back and block, people overlook that. They don't really care about it because they're just looking for the things that they can hit you with, right? They just want to see, well, how can I land my attack? All right. And the thing is when somebody's doing these subtle movements, you can still technically hit them. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can. All right. So let me grab my handy dandy notebook again. So walk and block is very powerful in this game. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason why is offensively, if I'm walking and blocking, I can close the gap while still being able to block, right? Of course, you want to do it in a set rhythm. Because if you try to react to everything, it's very unrealistic. So there are going to be things that hit you out of your walk and crouch, right? So let's say if I'm walking and then I'm trying to walk and block Balrog's EX dash punch. That's very difficult to do at up close range. So I'm not going to want to rely on that. I'm going to want to do in a certain rhythm, a walk and block. So that way I can automatically like option select block it. Okay. An option select being that an option is covered without my intention of me trying to like, purposefully punish it right away. Okay, so like if the situation occurs, then I would have the said counter. All right, so if he does an EX dash punch, although I'm not looking for it, I would block it. I would block a retaliation button. I would block X, Y, and Z. Okay, even though I'm not specifically looking for one thing, excuse me, I'm capable of countering or protecting myself from certain move sets based off of how I'm moving. Okay, so this is important. So you can also do this moving backwards. So you'll see a lot of top level players during block strings that they stand up, right? And the reason why is because a lot of top level players, they do this. Now, what does this do? So unlike moving forward, right? If I'm moving forward, I can get hit because I'm not blocking, right? So case in point, if I'm moving forward, I can't block, right? But you can block moving backwards, right? But the thing is that I'm not watching my feet. So let's say, you know, I'm doing this. Okay, I'm gonna get hit, right? So I'd have to watch my feet, right? But now what top players do is that they introduce a crouch block for a certain amount of frames, so that way they can block any potential lows, right? And the reason why this is so strong, see? I'm gonna show you why this is so strong. It looks very simple. It looks like, okay, well, I mean, I don't see the big deal about it. I'm gonna show you. Now, let's say my opponent decides to come up and throw me, right? That's what would happen. All right, and now I'm gonna demonstrate it. I'm gonna turn on both of these, so you can see how I cover both the options. And I don't know what she's gonna do, right? I'll turn off the key display so I can't see it, okay? Right? I don't even have to think about it. That was just automatic. It was very easy, and it was just look at how much I got off of it. Yeah, if I block, I'm still in the pressure, but at some point, the pressure is gonna end, right? Because look at the gap between me and my opponent increasing. All right. So this is a very strong tactic. But it does have its weaknesses. And the weakness would be this. If somebody were to just commit right away to a low. Because the thing is that, right? Let's say I could walk back and I could immediately crouch, but the thing is if I immediately crouch, then I would still be in range of throw. Okay? So let's say let me do a short walk back throw, right? See, and I was still in range. So I would want to introduce a longer walk back So that way I'm guaranteed to be out of range of a walk-up throw. As long as they don't walk up like extra knowing that I'm doing that. All right. And then if I do this like really short, see, I could still block it. I still moved up. I moved back and I still blocked it, but I would still lose to a walk-up throw in that scenario. So what I have to do to avoid the throws, I have to walk back even further. But the longer I walk back, the longer I'm not blocking. You see? So that increases the chances of something like this hitting me. Right? So hence, right? And if you look at my inputs, I still got hit. You can clearly see that I did the down forward, down back, but I got hit because her advantage, she's +3, right? And her low forward is 7 frames. So there's a 4-frame gap before she hits me. If I'm walking back for more than 3 frames, then I'm going to get hit low. So if I block for 3 frames, or if I walk back for 3 frames and block on frame 4, then I would block her low forward. Right? So I made this chart because I want to show you guys something also. So I made this little graph, all right? And this is what's going to help a lot of you guys understand the rhythm of when people are walking and how they're moving. Because the big movement stuff, that stuff is like, that's relatively simple to understand how to punish people, especially if you combine it with the zones lesson that I have on YouTube. If you guys haven't, please check that out. And this lesson today is going to make that lesson way more significant, especially if you're watching this movement-based stuff right now that's going on. All right, but so I'm going to be focusing on the subtle movement because this is the more advanced thing that gets used against players and they're not even aware of why this stuff is working or why their stuff isn't working. Okay, so if you look at this graph, you'll see that on the very top, let me move my camera so I can like point at this stuff. Okay, so you'll see like this line right here that my palm is underneath, this line represents blocking. Okay, so that's what the end means. So think of it like electricity or atoms, right? Where you have a proton, you have a neutron, and an electron, right? So your neutron, which is no charge, would be block because you're not risking anything, right? I mean, you can get overheaded, yeah, we get that. You can get grabbed, but that's irrelevant to what I'm trying to say. So let's say block is a neutron, right? And let's say unblock, moving forward, is a proton, which would be positive because you're closing the gap, right? So it's advantage. And moving away, moving back would be an electron. It would be negative, okay? So let's say that's what's going on here, all right? So when you see the line, when you see this line, right? Let's pretend it's like a heartbeat, right? You know, like those machines at hospitals where it's just like the heart, I don't know the exact terminology, what it's called, but where the heart rate is measured, right? And it's like a wave and it's like really spiky, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. So let's say that when it's a flat line, you're not blocking, you're not active, right? You're not alive, you're not doing anything. But when you move forward or backwards, you've given life to your character, right? Your character is just a dummy. It's just sitting there like in sync inside of their music videos when they're in those boxes, right? Like action figures. But then when you move, you give life to it. So, right, you move, but at the cost of you moving, you can't block, right? For a certain amount of frames. So as long as you're holding forward or back, you cannot block a certain way. So if you move back, you can block, but you can't block low. And if you're moving forward, you can't block, period, until you commit to block, okay? So the reason why I created this is because I want to show you guys a rhythm, all right? So this would be like a rhythm, right? So at the very top of the pyramid, like this point, we will say that is the point of action, all right? And then when it goes flat again, you're blocking. So in between these moments, these gaps in between the triangles are moments of blocking, okay? So I want you to see that. And you see how there's kind of variety, like this one's a little bit longer than this one. and this one is a little bit shorter than this one, right? And then this one has a very long, just straight line, okay? So that right here, this entire line is just blocking, all right? And then I made the same thing for the bottom. So this is gonna be the same principle, but moving backwards. So I'm gonna demonstrate the rhythm of this. Obviously, this isn't gonna be like some mathematical, like precise representation, but it's just to show you guys like how you can equate movement to opportunities to punishing people, okay? So I wanna show you this. So I'm going to make the movement graph at 50% opacity, okay? And I want you guys to pay attention to Akuma in the background, all right? So let's start off with forward plus, all right? So if I were to make my movement like this, that's what I would like try to make it look like, all right? Again, it's not super accurate. It's just to show you what I'm trying to do here. So I'm blocking, which is a flat line, which is N, right? That plane. And then anytime I go over the plane, I'm not blocking, right? But I'm not blocking moving forward, right? So you guys see that triangle, right? So this is what it would look like. And then at the end, it would be a long line. So let's say there's 4 triangles, so there would be 4 pumps basically. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's like a long pause, a long amount of blocking, right? Okay, so now let's do the inverse. Let's look at the unblocking moving backwards, which is the bottom portion of this graph that I made, okay? So you see how there are more triangles? That means there is more moments of not blocking, right? So there are more points of not blocking. So let's say there are, what, 6 triangles? So it would be something like that, okay? So where the top was 4 points, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4. The bottom portion is 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? And if I were to draw it in the way with the block string that I just did, like some people do this, it would be like a bunch of triangles, like, right? That's what the heart rate would look like. It would just look like that, right? So when you see people moving like this, you want to think of the opportunity of where can I hit them, all right? So when can I potentially intervene on their movement and land damage, okay? Because as you've seen here, because Cammy wasn't in tune with my rhythm, or she's using the wrong tool set, I was able to block all of this, all through subtle movement. I didn't have to commit to dash, back dash, anything crazy like that. I just did walk and block. That was it, all right? But then once Cammy gets a sense of the gap of where the triangles are, when Cammy knows, hey, you're not blocking here, I'm going to hit you when you're not blocking. All right, that's what a frame trap is, you see? So basically where Cammy just hit me right there would be right where you see unblock. That triangle, see? So that's how you would pick up on movement. Like, or how you would counter the subtle aspects of movement, okay? So I have another example. Hopefully this is making sense to you guys. Please let me know. All right. So I also have another one. Let's see. It is. All right. Now I made this. Well, I didn't make this. Kaizen made this for me, but I put this on the screen for this exact reason. Okay. So we have the zones. Okay. You guys know me and my zones, and I made that video, of course, right? So when we look at this, this isn't going to be too accurate because the image doesn't scale with me moving on training stage. But this is just to show you guys a visual, because I know a lot of people were kind of confused by this. So you see where Cammy's standing, right? And where I'm standing. That distance creates zone 5, okay? So zone 5, if you want to get into the real in-depth aspects of this stuff, you can go watch my video on YouTube. It's the zones video, and you'll see this in the thumbnail, the full picture. But if you haven't already, I would go check that out and then revisit this when I upload this again. But for now, just tune along or whatever. But right here, this is zone 5, okay? So when you transition zones, you want to see how does the person close the gap, and how specifically risky is that movement in terms of closing the gap. So let's say I'm at zone 5. I'm playing Akuma. I'm playing against Cammy, and I want to get to my effective range, right?
That.
Oh man, who the heck just? Oh, Kana Sutra, I appreciate the sub. Much love to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. We're gonna talk right after this, all right? So back to this. So let's say I want to get into my effective positioning, right? So we'll say I want to get to my stand fierce range, right? Let's say stand fierce, which is right around here. Okay. I want to get into this space, but I'm all the way over here, right? I want to be here, or I want to be here rather, right? Let me save it right here. Max distance, right about here. Okay, perfect. I want to be there, but I'm all the way over here. So how do I get here when I'm all the way over here? All right. So when you're playing against people, you want to figure out how do they get into that range that's been fucking you up. If you can't beat them in a certain situation, let's say I have a hard time blocking Laura, right? Let's say I have a hard time blocking Laura. Well, how exactly is Laura getting into that positioning where she's fucking me up? Right? Excuse my language, but I just gotta emphasize it. How is she beating me up? How? Can we pinpoint it? Well, this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna figure out, well, how is she getting into that spacing? What spacing is she beating me up at? Okay, so let's say Akuma here. I want to get into this spacing, right? Akuma wants to be in stand fierce range. Well, how is he getting into stand fierce range? Is he walking up and doing? Is it a subtle movement or is it a big movement? Because if it's a big movement, then it's easy to punish him. Let's say he's doing, he's jumping from zone, I don't know, let's say from zone 4 to 2, right? He's jumping, and then he's doing empty jump, like fierce or something, right? Again, this isn't like a legitimate tactic. This is just for an example, a demonstration of what I'm trying to say. So let's say he's transitioning through a big movement. So what I would tell myself is, every time he goes to zone 4, he does big movement. So then now you work even further backwards. So you say, well, how is he getting to zone 4? You see where I'm going with this, guys? So in order for me to stop this, all I have to do is say, how is he getting to that? Well, he was jumping from here. All right, so then how did he get to that range? How did he get to zone 4? Maybe he backdashed after a fireball. You see what I'm saying? Or maybe fireball created the range. You see what I'm saying? So if I fireball and I create the range, and now I'm here, so now I can say, oh, so in order for him to get into stand fierce range, he jumped at me, but he was jumping from zone 4, and in order for him to get to zone 4, he fireballed at me at zone 3 because of the pushback from fireball. You see what I'm saying? So we're reverse engineering the sequences that are allowing this to happen. Does that make sense, guys? Are you guys hype? Is this like connecting your neurons in your brain? Because I love when you guys understand this stuff. So that's what's going on. That's how you can use movement to counter people, all right? So let's say like a very common movement that Cammy does is this. Let me save this. I'll be corner. All right. Let's say this very, very common movement that Cammy does, right? She does this offensively, where she likes to, right? Let's say into dive kick or something, right? So, and then she does dive kick. The reason why Cammy's usually dive kick after low forward is because it's kind of a measuring tool. It tells the Cammy player, hey, I'm in range to potentially land my dive kick with the best spacing, so I have the best possible advantage on block and on hit I can combo. All right, so you can use this against them. So let's say you're playing against Cammy and you notice Cammy is beating you up with dive kick. Let's reverse engineer this. Well, how is she dive kicking me? Well, she's dive kicking me at zone 2. Well, how's she getting to zone 2? She's using low forward to push her back to zone 2, right? And then I say, so I can use this against her. I say, okay, boom. So then I have a hard read. That's how you make those crazy reads on people. You don't always have to do this, but it is good to be able to make hard reads when it's necessary, because hard reads can transition, you into a crazy comeback, or they can help you seal out a round because you've attacked some sort of subtlety in your opponent's behavior that they weren't aware of. Okay, so that's how you could use that against them. All right. Another one I can give you is like an Akuma one. This is a very common Akuma tactic, where they will do like button, fierce into that, right? That's super common. So like anytime I would like, if I'm playing against an Akuma and I see stand fierce, I would automatically go into air fireball. If they have bar, I'd go into anti-EX air fireball mode, because I know that that's the common situation that they want to do at that spacing after that block string. That's what they want to do, right? Because a lot of people tend to retaliate and then they get hit and they get all excuse me, all this damage and a follow up with pressure. So then I could use that against them. Okay, so that's how you can use that. So you can apply this to multiple matchups, whatever you want. So let's say like you're watching like a tournament match. Instead of watching it casually, maybe try for the next week or so, try watching matches with this in mind. Like just watch the characters and forget the players and just say, okay, what is this Ibuki player doing? How does this Ibuki player consistently land low forward into V-trigger? What are they doing? Are they becoming, in terms of the chart, are they moving forward and landing it, or are they moving backwards and baiting their opponent to move forwards and then they hit the low forward? You see what I'm saying? Like, so there are different ways to go about accomplishing one thing, but you can simplify it to big or subtle movements, right? Being the subtle is walk and block. Are they walking and blocking? And how are they walking and blocking? Are they walking and blocking with a lot of silence between it? You see what I'm saying? Is it like that? Or are they walking and blocking where it's like a lot of, you know, or maybe they're whiffing buttons, you know? That can be looked at as unblock also, because remember, you're not able to block until your animation's through and finished, right? So now let's go into an example. I want to show you guys examples really quick, all right? Of this, let's see. Okay, so we have two examples. I have the Momochi versus Daigo from Stunfest Street Fighter 4, okay? And I also have the Kimono Michi versus 10 example between Daigo and Tokido. So I'm going to show you different like tactics that are used to recognize movement and see what somebody's intentions are, okay? Because when somebody is moving forward, remember, like if they're all of a sudden doing one movement when they weren't doing it before, that means their intentions might have switched up, okay? So that's where this part of the lesson is going to come into play. So I'm going to show you this first, all right? Make sure this is all good. All right, this is good. You guys can see it. Okay, cool. So this is the 99-second mark, all right? This is how high level this shit is. Literally, this is grand finals. Momochi's on winner's side. Daigo's coming back from losers, okay? So I just want to show you how intricate this is. It's very subtle, but this is going to make sense when I explain it to you, all right? I'm going to show you the first 5 seconds of this, okay? And then I'm going to pause it, and I'm going to rewind it, and I'm going to tell you what happened that allowed this to happen, okay? All right? 3, 2, 1, go. So that was like the first 6 seconds, whatever. But how the hell did Momochi do that? How? Well, believe it or not, it's not actually that difficult to figure out how he did it. All right. So he throws the fireball. You notice Daigo doesn't do anything. Daigo is doing what? What is he doing, guys? If you watch his movement, see he's moving backwards, right? What's going on, KB? My brother. Guys, if you guys haven't already, tune into KB stream. Every Monday, he has the Master Lounges, where the best players from around the country basically are playing in his lounges. It's really entertaining. He's a great host, awesome dude, great energy, and he's very insightful. So if you guys haven't, I would highly recommend checking him out. That's my homie right there. Out of Georgia, very strong scene also. So you guys aren't too familiar with that scene, he can introduce you to a lot of the players too, all right? So you guys will see right here, Daigo's doing what? He's moving backwards. He's withdrawing, right? He's going in the negative, the electrons, like we talked about with that example, the bottom portion of the graph, right? So he's being defensive. And as you gain experience, you'll notice what you can associate defensive actions with and offensive actions with. So you see that Daigo's being defensive, right? And then you'll see Momochi does a fireball right away, right? He walks, crouches, he sees he doesn't do anything. And he's like, all right, I'm going to fireball. And now you see this is a very crucial moment. You see that reversal? That tells you the timing of Daigo doing that fireball. So he did fireball at the very first opportunity after block's done. Okay? So I'm going to rewind this again. All right? So you see Momochi crouches. And he says, okay, I don't see anything crazy yet. He walks back. right? Which is another common tactic with zoning. You see, now you're going to see two different ways of how walking back is associated with zoning. You see that Momochi walks back, right? Like a longer period of time than Daigo does, but Daigo's kind of crouching and walking backwards, but they still have a zoning mindset going on, right? And you see Momochi takes advantage and he puts the fireball on top of him, right? But then this happens. So Momochi sees that and he says, oh, okay, so after you blocked the fireball when you were in this defensive mindset, when you were walking and blocking backwards, you fireballed immediately, right? So the thing is that what I want you guys to learn that I didn't realize was that when you have information, this is something I kind of like struggled with over the years, but now I'm understanding it, is that you don't necessarily have to recreate the moment right away and punish people. It's just so that when it happens again, you're like ready for it. You know what I'm saying? So if you can practice it, I would practice visualizing the answer. And then when it happens again, you'll automatically do it if you get the chance. Obviously, the first time you do these things, it's going to be hard. It's not easy. It's not internalizing your brain to be able to do this, but it's a new muscle you'll be developing. So you see that Momochi sees he does that fireball on reversal, right? Okay. All right. And now look what happens. Daigo blocks this, all right? And we just talked about what happened when Daigo blocked the fireball and he was defensive. So you see, this is why he dashed up. And I think that's a Kara focus attack. But yeah, he does a Kara focus attack, dashes up and punishes him. All right? So let's rewatch this again with everything that we just learned. All right? So you see, he sees the advantage. He sees that he has the advantage. He takes it when he crouches. Right? Does the fireball. He says, oh, okay, I'm a fireball again. But then he sees the reversal. So he sees that Daigo's now in, he transitions from defensive walk back to zoning in this situation. So he's like, okay, when you blocks. And then when he blocked that, he's like, oh, you're now about to fireball me again. And that's why he does that hard read. Okay? So it's very subtle, but a very important concept that was demonstrated right there. And when I saw that, I always resort back to that set because there are so many elements that happen that it's like years of experience from both players. They've both been playing for like over 15, 20 years. Daigo's definitely been playing for more than 20 years, but Momochi's probably been playing for like, what, 15 to 20, I'd say. All right. So the next example we have is Daigo versus Tokido. Okay. So what I want you guys to see here is that Daigo being stationary, how it works against him. And if you watched his post interview of this set of the Kimono Michi where he beat Tokido, and Tokido cried, we all know that infamous scenario, right? When you seen Daigo talk about it, he mentioned that his sole strategy was to be very mobile because he understood that crouching made him stationary and it was easier for Akuma to land Stand Fierce. So Stand Fierce was the button that was fucking Daigo up. So that was the button regulating Daigo. So Daigo was just like, I don't want to be in a situation that allows him to abuse this. So what did that tell Daigo? Well, Daigo's like, well, if I'm crouching, I'm going to be an easier target because I'm not moving and I'm fatter. You're also, a fatter character when you're crouching. So that's something he's really mindful of. So he says, all right, well, I'm going to stand up. I have the walk speed to stand up and play footsies. And I can air to air and I can air throw if somebody does jump at me. Okay. So what I want you guys to see here is how crouching puts Daigo in a very unfavorable position because he does fireball and crouch. So during the set, even though he has that strategy where he's trying to stand up and fight, not blocking his ankles, right, and being skinnier and just maneuvering with a charge character, mind you, he still has the muscle memory of wanting to go back to down back. So that's why, like, if you do rewatch the set, the matches that Daigo does lose, it's because he resorts back to down backing a lot. All right. So just watch this. All right. So you see, after he blocks that fireball, he didn't block that fireball standing, that red fireball. He crouch blocked it. All right. So because he crouch blocked it, now Tokido's like, okay, so now I got you stationary. So even though you have flash kick, I know that you don't want to keep charge. So you might be in a moment of contradiction. There might be a state of like affliction between what you want to do and what you're trying to accomplish and your muscle memory. Okay. So right there, he sees him crouching. So that's a big tell. That tells him that Daigo is now in a defensive zoning mindset. Okay, so he's not gonna have the charge if he does throw a fireball here. All right, because Tokido's the one that's at an advantage. If Guile does fireball and you block it, and then he fireballs again, then that's a different situation because now you have to resolve the frame advantage from the previous fireball. But in this situation where Guile does the fireball right away, it's very good for Akuma to jump because he is neutral, you know, at worst if he's jumping at the appropriate time. And at best, he could potentially jump on top of him, okay? So you see, that's why he jumps in on him and Daigo doesn't do anything, right? And now look what happens. All of this snowballs because of that one decision. All right, now I want you to see how Daigo adjusts to it, which is really dope. So you see, so he gets pushed back to that range, that fireball range. You see Tokido walks back because Tokido knows that walking back triggers zoning in his opponent's mind. So he walks back and he tries to jump in on him, right? Now, Daigo's aware of that, and then that's how Daigo snipes out the jump in attempt because he understands that based off of movement, moving backwards is defensive and defensive maneuvers are associated with zoning. So if he's associated with zoning in terms of what he's trying to do, then it's very likely that Tokido is trying to not zone but use the idea of zoning against me. So I'm gonna just wait it out. Any air to airs him. Okay, because why else would he was very active leading up to this point. So why is it that he's now all of a sudden just waiting, right? See? And right there, it got used against him because, again, that red fireball seems to be triggering Daigo to, like, crouch or whatever. But here, you try to anti-air him with crouching jab, but again, the crouching idea is not a good idea against Akuma for Guile, period, unless he has flash kick, okay? But in this instance, he doesn't have flash kick. So this is just muscle memory Daigo is just resorting to. Because if you look, you'll see he tries to jab. That's the startup of jab. Alright. So now let's fast forward. Let's go to 2607. Now this is the really good example. So Daigo's walk back indicates fireball, to which Tokido jumps on, and then the very next situation. Okay, so this is the one I was talking about with his adaptation. And then, so the very next situation after Daigo gets jumped in on, you're gonna see how he adapts. Okay. Okay. So you see that jump? That jump that he landed on him was set up because Daigo revealed his intentions by walking back. See? Because Daigo's not really being active, so he's looking for a place to fireball here. And what Tokido likes to usually do is that when he senses that you're in a fireball mindset, he wants to trigger your fireball. So he's going to move in a certain way that suggests it's okay to fireball. See? So that's why he likes to move back. He'll hover around zone 3. And he'll just like move back and jump. Now let's watch Daigo's adaptation to this, okay? So you see, he does jab, fireball, right? Now he's doing stand jab, so now he's alternating his feint. Usually top zoners, they'll alternate their feints between standing and crouching because it's enough variety to where it can confuse somebody. So he feinted the crouching jab, and then he does the stand jab right here, right? And you see how he jumped immediately? It's because of the previous instance where he did jab and he fireballed him, right? And he walks back. He does the same scenario with him walking backwards again, but this time he feints the stand jab, all right, as you see right there, and then he jumps. He just commits to jump. You can just finish this round out. But this is a really great set. If you want to learn about movement, this is like a very dope set, just because of how all the subtle things that occur between both players. And because Daigo's moving around so much, it's very difficult to pinpoint what his intentions are, or where his charges are. See, because he's moving around so much that Tokido in his head is like, all right, you're being very mobile, so I don't have to really worry about flash kicks. We see Daigo's not fireballing unless he knows the situation it calls for it and it's okay to do it. Like right there, he fireballs him on his landing frames. He doesn't fireball him until then, until it's like, okay, I'm confirmed I can hit you with this. I have him in block stun. See, so now he has him in block stun. It's okay to zone. So that's his idea. So when he doesn't have him in block stun, he doesn't want to throw a fireball. Until he gets him in block stun, he's like, I'm going to just play the stand-up game with you. I might throw some fireballs here and there, but it's just to convince you of the idea that I want to zone, but I really don't want to zone. Okay? So yeah, that is all for today's lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, so let me know what you guys think. This was I think it's very important for all of us that are tuning in to walk away from this understanding the importance and significance of movement. All right, so like to be aware of the fact that movement can be used for or against you. So you can use your opponent's movement to counter some sort of flaw in their approach, but you can also use your movement to trigger something in their behavior. All right, but then it's also to highlight that your movement can be, you know, used to exploit you also. So if you don't know why it is that you keep getting hit by low forward, why it is you keep getting crush countered, it might be because of your movement. Remember the example I just gave with the Kami, with Akuma, with those common scenarios of how they transition into a certain offense, right? You want to figure out, well, what is it leading up to these moments? You just want to reverse engineer the sequences. That's why if you don't remember it, if you can't recall it, it's good to go back and at least watch your replays and see what was I doing that allowed him to do that. All right. So big takeaways I would say for you guys are just try to remember the rhythm of walking forward or walking backwards, and try to strike people when they're not blocking. And also the importance of somebody's movement, the big movement into certain ranges, and how they use that movement to close the gap, or how they're trying to maintain possibly some spacing based off of their movement, because you can use that movement as a means to get insight into what's going on upstairs. Here, you're basically having a conversation with somebody on the screen, whether they realize it or not. Okay, so you guys, much love to you guys. Shout outs to KB, shout outs to Hot Stepper, Titan, what's going on? I like the Pikachu emoji. Tex Neo, thank you, sir, for the love on the Sagat. Shivs, my brother, I miss you, bro, man. Genesis, thank you for tuning in. All right, guys, so with that being said, if you guys haven't already, feel free to follow me on my Twitter account. Follow me also on my Twitch if you haven't. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel too, okay? Because all of my lessons that are on these streams, the Monday and Thursday streams, all of them get uploaded, okay? So if you guys ever miss out, which I hope you guys don't, because, you know, I'd rather you guys be in here supporting your boy live and direct, full effect, right? But of course, life happens. But if you guys want to tune in, I always upload these to my YouTube channel, and it's there, and it's accessible at any moment. I highly recommend you watch it at your own pace and practice the things you want to practice, okay? So I have a full playlist, all of my analysis paralyses and my Mastery Mondays, all organized, chronological order on my playlist, so you guys can tune into any single one of them, any given moment, all right? So I appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. As always, Kiba, thank you for tuning in. Much love to you, Neo Cable. All right, so if you guys haven't already, feel free to throw your boy some Twitch primes, you know, because I have that objective. I'm trying to get to 50. I'm trying to get to 50. That's gonna happen. I'm gonna make that happen. 5 days. 5 days. So if I don't stream, KB, thank you for the follow, brother. If I do not stream tomorrow, when I don't stream Mondays and Thursdays, I stream just me playing and practicing training mode, the lab, ranked, battle lounge, whatever. Analyzing hitboxes and hurtboxes. If I'm not doing that tomorrow morning, my very next stream will be Thursday, okay? And that is my analysis paralysis. So you guys can catch me on there. Little Creepy Sleepy, what's going on, bro? All the birdie players are in here. That's mad funny. I appreciate the cheers, man. Much love to you. So, all right, guys. I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.